Welcome back to the Sebastian Scales Show. My body and mind are reacting to me starting this episode of the podcast and the podcast in general as if I'm being chased by a woolly mammoth and my whole family's lives are at stake. That's the level of resistance that I feel to being authentic. For what reason? Why are we so afraid to be ourselves? What do we think is going to happen? I'm going to share my authentic thoughts with the world and everyone is going to turn on me and then I'm going to get kicked out of the tribe. From an evolutionary perspective, I guess it makes sense. And that's what our ego is trying to do, is to keep us safe. And because I haven't been being completely authentic most of my life, it's used to that, and it knows that if we stay acting like that, it'll sort of we'll be okay. We've proven that we can at least survive 26 years. I'm saying we as in me, my ego, and my higher self, neither of which are mine. Okay, this is going to be just jumping right into the mix here. I guess it's like when you're having a conversation with people and somebody says something that you disagree with and you pause for a second before speaking your mind or not. And in that moment, it is so much safer to just not do it. From an evolutionary perspective, it would be insane to disagree with somebody else because that's going to create danger and hostility. But we don't need our bodies to react in the same way that we used to most of the time. I have not needed yet in my life to run for my life or from anything, let alone like a saber-toothed tiger. But my mind creates these scenarios in my head that my body then treats as a fact and responds in the same way as if it was a life-threatening situation. Like, I'll be in my head about, like, my friend's dad sent me a text today. He sent me this article, and he thought of me when he read it, and he had been gone in Costa Rica for a long time, and he responded to me saying thank you for the article, and I asked him how his trip was, and he said that they're changed people now because they've been living in a different country, which I get. You feel very different when you come back to where you're from after being somewhere else for a long time. And I was like, cool, well, I can't wait to meet the new Copelands when I get back. And it's just, that's who they are. And I sent that text, and immediately in my head, I was like, he's going to think, because he said that they're like new people and that they're like super happy now. And I sent that text saying, I can't wait to meet the new Copelands. And then in my head, I was like, he's going to think that I mean that they weren't happy before this. Which is basically what he's saying anyway, but I'm worried about him interpreting my message as me being like, oh, well, you weren't happy before, so glad you're finally there, pal. He basically said the thing that I'm worried about him interpreting what I'm saying to be, and I'm still worried about it. And it makes you... the more I become aware of these thought patterns and how I operate, how my mind works, the more I realize that, like, your brain will produce interpretations of whatever's happening in your life at that moment that would merit worrying in the mind. And like, as if I'm going to text the guy again and be like, sorry, I didn't mean it like you weren't happy before, blah, 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 blah. Like, your brain just creates these scenarios to worry about just to have something to do, just to be on high alert. I could not be this guy's he's been in Costa Rica for 2 years and now he's in Seattle. I'm in LA. I could not be in less danger from this person. And on top of that, he loves me. That's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I'll catch myself worrying and be like, wow, the people that I'm worried about what they think about me love me. Not only are they not thinking what I'm worried they're thinking about me. But it's not even like they're neutral. They love me. And in my head, it's like they hate you because of this text message. They're going to be mad at you because of this message, despite 20 plus years of friendship. You just fucked it up. Way to go. And now you need to fix the situation. Otherwise, this danger is really going to take its toll on you. It's frustrating and cool at the same time, because I get frustrated that despite all of the meditation that I've done and the introspection that I've done, I still operate like this to a certain extent. But it's also cool because I realize that like all you can do is be aware of it. And it's a hell of a lot better to be aware of it than oblivious to it. And then that's where the anxiety comes from, is because you start with a thought and then it spirals. And what started as a thought about my friend's dad being mad at me for a text message is all of a sudden I'm worried about whatever happened to me 14 years ago. Not the molestation, but some embarrassing shit that happened in 7th grade. I remember being a horrible kisser, or so I thought in the first time that I had a kiss. But it's just it's a crazy train of thoughts. And if you're not aware of it, they'll just keep going. And the quicker you can become aware of it, the quicker you can decide to step out of that train of thought. So I've gotten better at recognizing when I'm having a thought train that I don't want to be having. And I'll come out of it just by being aware of it. Being like, hey, like this guy, it's okay. He doesn't hate you. He loves you. And even if he did hate you, it's okay. You're still safe. You don't need to put your mental energy into this hypothetical scenario that you just fabricated in your head without any confirmation that it's actually happening. Like, let them tell you. If this guy is mad at you, let him tell you. But don't react before it's happened. People argue that you need worrying for the anticipation of events and to make sure you're prepared for things that happen. But most of the time, the things that we're preparing for are ridiculous. Shit that we're going to say to somebody that we've been in an argument with when we finally see them in person, and I'm going to get them. It's all ego. It's all wanting to preserve yourself and wanting to, diminish others, I guess, which would be preserving yourself, making yourself feel better and more significant. We don't want to feel insignificant. There's so many things that are the root of these reactions, but becoming more aware of it is so helpful because it happens faster. And now I'll have the first thought, and before it even takes off, before the train leaves the station, you see it. And you can decide if this is really what you want. And if it's not what you want, you can let it go. The analogy that helps me is thinking of thoughts as there's a stream of consciousness, and you're sitting on the bank next to the stream, and every thought is like a little leaf on the stream, and you can see every thought going by that you have in your head, and you can acknowledge it and be aware of it, and then decide if you want to stay on that leaf and follow it down the stream, or you can just watch it go by. And you're not forced to have these thoughts. That's how it feels when you're anxious. It feels like you have no choice, and that if you stop worrying, that the world is going to fall apart. Your world, your identity, whatever attachment you feel like you're losing control. And having experienced severe anxiety before, I'll choose this awareness over, I guess the word would be like immersive anxiety. I'll choose the awareness every time. And even with this awareness, sometimes it still creeps back in, and for whatever reason, you're not aware of it. And then an hour later, however long, days later, you're like, holy shit, what the fuck? Like nothing's happened. There's been no physical danger whatsoever. No confirmation that any of these things are actually going on. And you just snap out of it and you're like, what just happened? It's like blacking out. It's like a mental anxiety blackout. And it happens all day. All day, these thoughts come into your head, and your brain's just like, hey, here's something that, if you would like, here's 4 hours of anxiety. Feel free to indulge in this little thought bubble leaf. Or you can come back into what's actually happening. It's hard to be anxious when you're focused on what's actually happening. And when you are focused on reality, then when real danger presents itself, you can respond better than you could have ever responded if you were trying to predict things. Alan Watts talks about how the data for any given situation is infinite, and we spend our time trying to take enough data into consideration when we're making a decision, but you can't, no matter how hard you try. And most of the time when we decide, when we actually make the decision, it's not because we feel good about it. It's because there's no time left. We're forced to make the decision, and then we make it, and then we just deal with it. And we forget about all of the thoughts that we just had leading up to this decision that we made spontaneously in the moment. And it's so crazy how quickly we just have severe anxiety, and then the thing will happen that you were worried about, and it'll be some variation of what you thought was going to happen, and either good or bad or, whatever. But something that you were worried about for days will happen, and it'll be fine. And even if it wasn't fine, the fact that you were worried about it didn't make a difference most of the time, almost all the time. But then you'll just move on to the next thing, like as if you didn't just waste all of your energy trying to predict an unpredictable future. And then it's just on to the next thing. It's part of why I haven't, this is, I think, going to be episode 3 of the podcast. And I cannot believe how long I've been saying I'm going to do this. Pretty sure the first 2 episodes are just me talking about why I haven't done it yet, too. It's going to be a lot of similar things in this podcast, which, just as I said that, created a worry that you, the listener, watcher, are going to be like, oh, I know what this guy does. I know what this guy talks about. I'm not going to tune into this without any confirmation that that's going to happen. I might put this podcast out and have 100% of people like it. Unlikely, but possible. And then what for the thought that popped into my head? No one's even thinking this. Until you know, don't worry about it. Until you know for sure, until it's presenting itself in your actual reality, don't worry about it. There's too many things to think about. There's too much to consider, and because most of our thoughts and anxiety come from what other people are thinking about us, it truly is infinite, because anyone can be thinking anything about you. So even if you are having anxiety about what people are thinking about one specific aspect of yourself, like I think my nose looks like it's broken. It looks it looks broken. People could be thinking anything about me. And most of us try to predict what people are thinking about us all the time. And then even when we think we're right, it doesn't make a difference. We're like, oh, but then I can take these steps. Maybe I'll get a nose job to fix this issue. Think of the people that you are catering to by spending your energy like that. The people that hate me because my nose looks broken. Those aren't people that I want to make my life decisions based around. People who who have hatred for people whose noses look funny. Why do I give a fuck about what they think? Plus, they're in their own heads thinking about how big their ears are. Anything. Again, unlimited options. But these people that think negatively of us make up such a small percentage of the people that are, most people are not thinking anything about us, positive or negative. It's just everyone's in their head about their own shit. And I don't know how many times I need to hear that and know that before I actually believe it. And because, again, just today, with my friend's dad who loves me, probably not. This is not the friend's dad who molested me. This is a different friend's dad. Although the friend's dad who molested me also probably loved me, which is a crazy realization I had with this girl that I've been seeing recently. We were super high. Just gonna transition here, I guess, because it just came up. And also, feel free to just do it. I feel the need to explain everything that I do instead of just doing it and not worrying about it. Explaining, I guess, would be some form of anxiety too, trying to make sure you know that here's why I'm doing this, instead of just doing it because I want to. I didn't start this podcast episode with any intention of talking about this, but it just came up in this moment. So here we are. And this girl and I were talking, and we were talking about forgiveness. And we were talking about how forgiveness is really for the benefit of the person who was wronged. Because when somebody takes advantage of you, you store these negative feelings inside of you towards them. Even though you feel it about them, the feelings still exist within yourself. And as long as you hold that grudge and desire for retribution or whatever, those feelings exist within you, and they affect your reality. And when you release those feelings, one of the ways you can do that is through forgiveness. Those feelings, it's a huge weight off of your shoulders. And we were talking about forgiveness and all this stuff and how it's weird to think about, but I find a lot of solace in thinking about the fact that, not necessarily a fact, but I think that the guy who molested me wasn't trying to harm me. I don't think that he was, of course he knew what he was doing was wrong, but I don't think he was doing it because he wanted to hurt me. He never did physically hurt me. He fucked me up pretty bad emotionally, but it wasn't physical pain. Obviously, that's not like the requirement for whether or not this person is worthy of forgiveness, but I don't think he was trying to hurt me. And I was talking to her about this, and she was like, yeah, he probably loved you. And I was like, what the fuck? What a crazy thing to think about. And again, it's not justifying his actions. It's, for me, it's easier to forgive somebody when you realize that they loved you and the actions that they took, the things they did to you, were not stemming from a place of hatred towards you. It was their own experiences that caused them to do that. But it's a lot easier to forgive somebody who, when you interpret the situation that way. And I get why people are like, would never want to forgive the person who abused them. I understand that. I didn't forgive the guy for a long time. And having experienced that type of feeling, that holding on to these negative feelings towards this person, and now having forgiven him, you feel lighter. You feel like you have more energy available, and there's space for more positive feelings to exist within you rather than holding on to things. And it also, like, when you don't let go, it forever sort of ties you to that experience in the way that you've been perceiving it since you started having these negative feelings towards the person. And of course I still resent the guy for what he did to me and how he, took away my best friend. But I'm not going to hold those feelings in my current life experience anymore. And one of the ways that you can do that is by forgiving the person. So that was how I ended up that wasn't the right way to start that preface, or to preface what I was going to say, but I met this girl, and that type of a conversation is like, I mean, that's not like a normal conversation to have. And it was cool. And I'm glad that she felt like she could say that to me in that moment, because I'd never thought about it like that. And I think a version of me in the past would have been like, oh, what the fuck? Like, you're like siding with him? You're like justifying his actions or some shit? But this version of myself is less reactive. And that is a big part of letting go of anxiety, is not reacting to the thoughts that you're having immediately and assuming that they're facts and assuming intent. Like, I could have assumed easily that this girl was trying to defend the guy who abused me, which is so obviously not what she's doing. But if I'm storing those feelings inside myself and somebody says something like that, it's so much more likely that I react in this defensive and aggressive way towards her. And it's like, you know, I can already see it playing out. Like, how could you don't know what I've been through. You don't know me. You don't know what it was like. Of course she doesn't. She didn't say that she did. I'm saying that. And what does that accomplish? You think she was saying that to make you feel bad? I'm now going through this scenario and responding to myself from how I would have responded in the past, in a reactive mindset. I don't even know if this is going to make sense. This is fun. It's fun. It's fun. Sit down and do it. I was going to say pussy, and then I was like, wait, maybe you shouldn't say that word because it's got a negative connotation towards women. Like, there's the thought that pops into my head. Don't worry about it. I don't mean to call myself a pussy because I don't like women. It's because in my head, what pussy means is not doing something because you're afraid to do it. Should be associated with something other than vaginas, but that's just what popped into my head at that moment. So, to myself, stop being a pussy. And just, it's fun. This is who I am, everybody. This is it. This is my real train of thought that I'm sharing here. And the only reason I haven't done this more is because I'm worried about it, and I'm worried about being entertaining. And again, there's no amount of things that I can consider that will make me entertaining enough that will make me be the level of entertaining that I've created in my head that must be reached in order for people to listen to this. It's impossible. You know it is. So just do it. Just do it. And when I started talking about this girl, I thought about not sharing it because, I don't know. Well, she's leaving, and I just started having these feelings for her. And I guess talking about it would make it more real and would like solidify in my head. And I don't know. I'll get into my relationships eventually. But for now, I guess we'll stick with anxiety and all the other hypothetical scenarios. But this has been 26 minutes. I started recording this without any idea of what I was going to say. It was just like, it's like ripping a Band-Aid off, but for your personality. It's like, fuck it, dude. I'm tired of putting on this mask. I think I came to this conclusion recently too, that I've been a people pleaser my whole life, and as far as I know. And I think a big part of that stemmed from the molestation, because after we went to trial and the guy did not get convicted, he was just around my hometown. And so I would see him at sporting events, and it would always, like, there would be parents that would sit with him. And that, like, hurt me a lot, because it was like, oh, they don't believe me. And I felt like, I think a big part of my people pleasing stems from wanting people to believe me and wanting people to be on my side. If we go back to evolution, it's like, I don't want people to not be in my tribe, because it's my tribe versus this guy's tribe. And the way that I knew how to do that at the time was just by being nice to people and just smiling all the time. I'm a super smiley guy, and I am like that, but I think sometimes I default to it just as a defense mechanism. And it's exhausting, because you're not even like in the moment. You're not even expressing yourself. You're just trying to do what you need to do to keep other people happy, which in turn keeps you safe. And it's funny how, like, that now later in life, I'm like never mean to people. I've probably been mean to less than 10 people. And I'm trying to not talk shit anymore, because all that's doing is creating those feelings within myself. Just as I was just saying, like, you are creating that experience for yourself. You're curating it by talking shit. You can't talk shit without the idea being in your head of something negative. Even though it's directed towards somebody else, it originates in your head, within yourself. So you might be talking shit about somebody else, but that's what you're feeling. And sometimes it feels good. Like, that's a big part of why we do it, is because it feels, it's a stroking of the ego. You feel like, not only are you shitty for this whatever reason, but I'm not that, which makes me dope and more likely to survive. I'm pushing other people out of the tribe. So when I say I haven't really been mean to people, I haven't been mean to many people to their face, because that goes against my people pleasing, keep everybody on my side mentality. But in terms of talking shit behind people's backs, that I've done plenty of. I'm not proud of it, and I'm working on it. But it's interesting being aware of how things that you used to just do subconsciously without thinking about it, what's actually happening when you do something like talk shit about somebody. What's happening to you? And I noticed that the feeling, it's almost like after you jerk off and you just are sitting there and you're just like you don't feel good. You feel grimy, and you're like chasing that hit of dopamine, and whether that's from coming or from talking shit, you're chasing a very fleeting feeling that is not sustainable. Think about that feeling that you're chasing is only attainable through these like actions that you know are not beneficial for yourself. Talking shit about people does not help you in any way. Jerking off doesn't help you. Sometimes it can be a good release, but trying to chase a feeling that is so ephemeral is like the ultimate waste of energy and time. Wow, just hopping around topics here. It's a false sense of superiority when you're talking shit. And then you ever catch somebody like you're talking shit about the person who talks shit, and then it's like, wait, but what am I doing here? I have a friend who it feels like her main point of conversation is shitty things that other people do. And you can count on it. She'll just come up to you and start chatting shit about people that aren't there, which means for sure she's chatting shit about me when I'm not there. Who knows what about? I'm sure my brain will come up with a billion different things that she could be saying and all the things that I need to do differently to prevent her from saying that. And, but that, like, everyone is aware of how much shit she talks. And we all talk shit about her talking shit. And then it's like, what are we doing as a friend group? Why are we all talking shit about each other? I guess the best way to handle it would just be to not pay it any mind. Because you know that she's talking shit from a place of her own insecurity. And how that really is, she's not feeling good about that. It's the short-term dopamine hit of feeling superior, and then it goes away unless you keep doing it, which is presumably why she keeps talking so much shit. But you can see that person as somebody who's hurting in the same way that you can see the guy who molested me as somebody who was hurting. He has his own issues, clearly, that he has not dealt with. And I think the way to combat those people, combat isn't the right word, the way to deal with those people is not to do the same thing. It's not with hatred. It's not with talking shit back. It's definitely not by molesting more kids. But by approaching it with love. Because that will become your experience. Whatever you are feeling towards other people is what you're experiencing in this moment. So if you want to talk shit, you're going to be feeling shitty pretty soon. If she comes up to me and starts talking shit about somebody else, you don't want to be like, oh yeah, tell me more. Like, you don't want to encourage it, but you don't want to be a dick about it. So maybe it's just like, internally you can approach it with love, and externally you can just ask, like, I mean, it would be pretty funny to be like, hey, like, why do you always talk shit about everyone? I feel like the last 5 conversations we've had have just been about shitty things that other people have done. And it's not even like it's not that you don't like them. It's just that you're pointing out, it's not that she doesn't like them. It's that she's pointing out aspects of them that are weird. Things that I think she prides herself in, and it feels good to identify people that aren't good at the things that you do, that you're good at. Who knows? Just delving into the psyche of the shit talker in the friend group, who I am now also talking shit about publicly. It's going to be interesting to see how these conversations shift over the course of my life and however long I do this podcast. I wonder if I'll look back on this and be like, he is so full of shit. Or if I'll be like, dude's got some points. I don't know. But to my future self, I hope that you're approaching life with love instead of hate. And that you're still recognizing that all of your anxiety is just a form of self-preservation and wanting to keep yourself safe. And that you know that you are safe. No matter how much shit people talk about you, you're okay. You're loved. And you don't have to worry. And on that note, I think we'll end the pod. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.